Hi, this is Scott with eTrailer. Today we're taking a look at and installing the CURT TriFlex NEXT brake controller on our 2025 Kia Telluride. Along with that, we'll also be installing the eTrailer Universal Brake Controller wiring kit. And this is what our brake controller looks like mounted in our Telluride. As you can see, it doesn't take up a whole lot of space. I really like how this one turned out and how it ended up working in our Telluride, and not going to really be making any contact with my leg like some of the older style ones that hang down and you have to basically have mounted where they're laying flat. With this vehicle, there just really isn't any room for that. You'd constantly be hitting your leg with that. With this one, it's real skinny and out of the way. Now let's go over some of the features this one has. This is going to give you the opportunity to change modes on this one. You're going to have your gain. Now you can change that up and down, and it really depends on what type of trailer you're going to be pulling. So you can adjust your gain, and what that's going to do is the amount of pressure that your trailer brakes are applying when you apply the brakes with your car. So say you're going down the road and it feels like your trailer's really trying to grab every time you hit the brakes. You can adjust your gain down to where it doesn't have that much of a hit every time you hit the brakes. Now that can also depend on the loads that you have on your trailer as well. So your trailer may act different loaded down with whatever you have on there versus with it empty. So you can change that to whatever needs you have. Then for your next setting, you're going to have load, which is going to be the similar type of thing, and it's going to be the aggressiveness of the trailer brakes. So with either one of these settings, what I usually recommend is that you set it up to a middle setting. That way you can get a feel for how your brake controller is going to act with your trailer, and then you can adjust up or down accordingly from there. This brake controller is also going to have a manual override where, say you're going down the road and your trailer starts acting a little squirrely, maybe starts walking back and forth a little bit. All you have to do is just push in this slide, and that's going to activate your brakes on your trailer without using the brakes on your vehicle. So basically, you can just hit your brakes on your trailer with this slide right here. It's going to allow you to change the brightness however you want that. So you can go up or down with that. Depends on the brightness that you want. It's also going to have a night mode and day mode. And another thing I like about this one is you'll see is it will go to sleep. So if you're not using it all the time, it's nice to have that just go out so it's not light in your face all the time. But another nice thing about it is with it going into sleep mode like that, it doesn't have any draw on the battery of your vehicle as well. Another thing we're going to be installing today will be the eTrailer Universal Brake Controller wiring kit. And that's something you're probably going to need, and it's really going to help you get everything hooked up so you can be set up with your 7-way plug and all your wiring that you're going to need to get set up for your brake controller inside of your vehicle. Now, if you have any questions or comments about this setup for your Telluride, you can always get a hold of us here at eTrailer. One of our experts would be happy to help you with any of your questions, or if you could leave a comment down below, let us know how you're using your setup with your Telluride. A lot of our neighbors would like to see how other people are using theirs. As far as installation goes, it is a lot of wiring, but it is something you can definitely do yourself. Just follow along with the instructions. If it's something you don't have time to do yourself, you can always take a look at our dealer locator and get something done for you locally. If it's something you feel like tackling yourself, stick around, watch our video, and we'll help you get it installed. To start our installation, I did take our bracket that comes in our kit, and I did get a long bracket that we have, and I bent that so it will mount up to my hitch and then come down, and I bent it so it comes out just enough where I can get my bracket installed. Now this is a no drill mount, so this is going to be a good bracket, and I do recommend getting one of these. Other than that, there is a possibility that you could just mount it right to the plastic back here on your fascia. Now we'll take our harness and plug that comes in our kit. Let's get that fed into our bracket. With that, we'll take our supplied hardware and get this screwed in place. We have our screw through our bracket and our plug. We're going to take our flat washer, our lock washer, and our nut. Get those installed loosely. I'll come back through and install the rest of my hardware for the remaining 3. After we do that, we'll come back through and snug down all of our hardware. Closer to our 7-way plug, we're going to have this 4-way that sticks out, and that's just going to go in the slot. And that's just a nice addition that allows us to maintain our 4-pole connection. Now, in order to get this set up, we're going to have some form of 4-pole wiring already set up or being installed with this. So keep that in mind when you plan on getting this done. Now, what we're going to do is take our cap off, and we're just going to snip that cap off of there because we won't be needing that. We'll take our pre-existing 4-pole wiring and plug that into our harness. To keep these together, I'm just going to take a wire tie and run that through both of these up the middle. And what that's going to do is hold them together so they won't come undone. Now that I've done that, I'll come back through with some electric tape and wrap this all up. So now that we have that wrapped up, we'll go over our wires that we have. We're going to have this yellow wire, and we're not going to be using this one at all. This would be for a reverse circuit on our trailer, so we won't be using that. We're going to have our white wire that comes off, and that's going to have a ring terminal on the end of it. That's going to be our ground. We're going to have our black wire. That is going to be our 12-volt power to our plug from our battery coming from the front. And we're going to have our blue wire, which will be our signal from our brake controller to our trailer, which will activate our brakes. With these two, I'm just going to go ahead and cut the ends off these. I like to use heat shrink butt connectors on these because this is going to be outside of the vehicle in the elements. I'm going to go ahead and strip these off. Twist those. Get both of those stripped off. With that, I'll just come back through with 2 of my heat shrink butt connectors. These will not come in the kit, so I would recommend picking some of these up. It's a really good option, and it gives a good seal on your connection for your wiring. Now I'll just get these crimped in place. I'll just give it a little pull, make sure we have a good connection. For the duplex wire that comes in our kit, we're going to have 2 wires that come out of this. It's going to be a black wire and a white wire. We're going to use our black wire that's going to run up to power. We'll get that stripped off. And then the white wire that comes in it, we're going to use that to run forward for our brake signal, for our brake controller. Our blue wire coming out of our harness will be running forward for our brake signal from our brake controller. And we'll follow that up with our black wire that's going to run forward to our power. With those connected, I'm just going to come back through and use my heat source and heat those up and get those shrunk down around my wires. And when we're doing this, we're just looking for most of the bubbles to come out. And once we get to that point, We're looking for a little bit of gel to come out of the end. That's how we'll know we have a good seal. We need to get our plug grounded, so we're going to have our white wire, and we're just going to look for a good place to ground. We want a good double layer of sheet metal, so I have one right here in the back. And after we get that grounded, just want to make sure we can't move it at all, and that'll give us a good ground. After we got everything wired up, we just came back through and cleaned up our wiring, got everything tied up where we want it, out of the way. One thing to keep in mind when we do this is we need to pay attention to when we put our spare tire back in place that we don't bump it into our wiring, so we'll take extra care when we put that back in place. Where we ran our duplex forward, we ran it up attached to an existing harness, ran up over our cross member in the rear and tied off to the top of the cross member where it's not going to have any chance of coming down, of touching our axles, any exhaust or any moving parts. So we're up over that. And we came over by our gas tank and ran around the side of that and ended up coming down over and across and ended up running all the way up the middle, tied off up underneath here, so this dust cover is going to help protect our wiring as well. Came up, then we ran right up behind this bracket, up underneath of our hood, and we're up near the battery now, and that's where we're going to start with making more of our connections. Our duplex wires that we brought up from the rear of our vehicle, we went ahead and cut off some of the gray sheathing, and we ended up with our white wire and our black wire coming out of that. Now our white wire, we ran into a grommet in through a rubber boot and then went inside of our vehicle with that. And then our black wire, which came up, we brought that up and around and we ran that to our 40 amp circuit breaker, and we ran the silver post to the wire that runs to the back. Now our copper post ran over to our battery, and we put our ring terminals on, and we ended up with everything hooked that is going to be hooked up over here to our positive terminal. Now we don't have these hooked up yet because we need to finish our connections. But for now, we have our 30 amp, and this is going to be powering our brake controller. So we have our wire that's going to be running over to our positive terminal, and that goes to our copper. And now we have our silver, which is going to be our auxiliary. We ran this wire around in and in through the same grommet that we ran our white wire. Now we have all of the wires that we need run inside. After we have all of our connections made, we will hook both of these up to the positive terminal of our battery. Here we have our harness that came in our brake controller kit. This is going to connect right into the end of our brake controller. And what I'm going to do is not be using this plug at all, so I'm just going to snip off our plug and just hook into the wires through our ETBC7 setup that we have run. So this is going to hook into that directly instead of plugging into the harness of our vehicle. So with that, this is going to give me all the extra wire I need to route it where I want it and get our controller set up how our neighbor would like it set up. Now I'm just going to take my snips and cut off our plug. And after I do that, I'll strip off all of my wire ends. As far as our connections go under our dash, I did use heat shrink butt connectors on these. Now you don't have to, because this is going to be inside your vehicle and you're not going to have a wet environment. So you can just use regular butt connectors if you want, but I just went ahead and used the heat shrink. Now we have our blue wire that comes out of our harness, and if you remember, we're going to be using our white wire that came in. Now this is connected to our blue wire in the rear of our vehicle, and this is going to be our signal to our electric brakes in the rear that will be coming from our brake controller. Now our black wire we have that runs into our harness, this is going to run out and underneath of the hood and run to our 30 amp relay that we have out there. We have that connected, run through. Our red wire, this wire is the wire we have set up that is going to give us our brake signal from our vehicle. Now usually you will run this to a brake switch, but I got into our harness underneath of our dash and there's going to be a wire that runs across up there that is taped up in blue tape. I got into that and I ended up testing through our wires, and I found a green wire with a black stripe, and I did probe test that to verify to make sure that that is going to be our cold side for our switch. Now when you're doing that, you're going to take your wire and have that pulled away from the rest of your harness, and you're going to use a probe style tester to check that. When you get that set on that wire, you're going to go ahead and push on your brake. Now if your tester shines a light every time you touch your brake and then turns off, that's going to be your switch for your cold side brake side. Now to give you a better idea of how that looks, you can see that we have the green wire with the black stripe pulled away from our harness, and you can see all we did is just run a crimp connector onto that and then a red wire out as our jumper wire and ran out as an extension with that. Since it's really tucked up in there and hard to show you doing that in there, we're going to show you how we do this with the crimp connector. All you really want to do is identify your wire that you're going to be making your connection to, and how these work is this is going to have a dead end in one end. So like how we did it with our red wires, we took our red wire and ran that into the jumper end of it, ran that in, and then our green wire that came through, we ended up just pushing it down in through that slot. Now when you do that, you want to make sure you keep it in that position. Then you'll come back through and just take some pliers or whatever you have and just push down on that blade and make sure you get that to seat on both sides. Now you have a good connection on both of those. Now you can close up that. And if you wanted to go the extra mile, you can even take your tester and check your wire on this side to make sure that you have a connection that is worthy before you make all of your other connections to your brake controller. For our white wire that came out of our harness, we installed a ring terminal that came out of our kit and ran that right up to a steel mount that hooks to the side of the body on the inside of our driver's side kick panel. With our harness all connected underneath our dash, now we're back underneath the hood and we're going to make our connections. So we have both of our ring terminals that we're going to be hooking up. We're going to have our 10mm nut. Just want to undo that. Get both of our ring terminals in place. Before we tuck away all our wires and clean everything up, I want to make sure that our brake controller is working. So I'm just going to hook up our harness and we're going to see if we get a screen. And we do. It's showing the CURT logo. And we're showing a trailer not connected, so that's good. That means we have power and a good ground and everything's hooked up correctly. After everything's checked and working, what we need to do is figure out where we want to mount our brake controller. So this is kind of up to you and how you plan on using it and where you want to put it. Now there's a couple different ways you can mount this up as well. This mount can come off and you can mount this up with screws, and it does come with screws to do that. But you want to make sure you check behind anywhere you're putting these to make sure you're not screwing into something that you really don't want to be. So what I'm going to do today is it comes with some really good sticky tape, and it's kind of a double-sided tape, and it's really good stuff. And we're going to use this instead of screwing into our panels. So with this, you want to make sure that you get your areas cleaned up really well. So I like to use rubbing alcohol, and I'll clean up the area of my mount and the place where I'm going to be sticking this, just so we have a good contact with our sticky tape. So all we're going to do is remove the one side, and it actually matches up in the mount for our brake controller. Get that stuck down in place. Make sure you push it down real good, and we'll pull off the other side. And you just kind of want to get an idea of where you want your brake controller to live. And we're going to go with right there today. We'll just stick that in place And with it put there, we don't have any screws put through our panel. So if they ever wanted to remove that, they always can. Just pull off the sticky tape. And it's also in an accessible area where you're able to use it with your right hand while you're driving down the road. Now, as you can see, we have our brake controller all mounted up and all of our wires tucked away and cleaned up. With that done, now we can test our brake controller wiring and make sure everything works. Hook up our test box and check everything. Now I'm just going to go ahead and turn our vehicle to on. We can do our left turn, our right turn. We'll do our lights on. We'll do our brakes. Brakes with right turn, brakes with left turn. Now we'll check the function of our brake controller. And we have that. Shows everything working. So all of our wiring and everything is correct. With everything working, that will do it for our look at and our installation of our CURT TriFlex NEXT brake controller on our 2025 Kia Telluride. I'm Scott with eTrailer, and thanks for watching.